So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again is nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. I am delighted to welcome Ivo Michalick to the show. Ivo is a project management professional with nearly 40 years of experience. He holds BS and MS degrees in computer science, a PMP and PMI-SP credentials, and a CPCC credential from CTI, the Coactive Training Institute. He has an extensive experience in managing large projects and portfolios and programs in industries such as information technology, mining, energy, defense, health, oil and gas, logistics, telecommunications, both in Brazil and abroad, including 3 years working in the US, possessing a deep knowledge of organizational project management in multicultural environments and power skills. And since 2005, he has held several leadership positions as a PMI volunteer, both locally as a former chapter president and at global levels. He graduated from the PMI Leadership Institute Masterclass program, and is a recognized speaker and author of several articles and books published across in Brazil and around. Some of those I won't try and read because they're written in Brazilian and my accents will be terrible. So, Ivo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nige. It's an honor.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant to have you here. Let's start with the basics and get that little background on who you are. So where were you born?
Well, I was born in a small city in the Minas Gerais state, and when I was about 2 years old, I moved to Belo Horizonte, which is the capital city of Minas Gerais. Minas Gerais is translated as general mines, so lots of mining activity, but not just that. Services, a little bit of tourism, and I've been living here since I was 2, except for 5 years when I lived 3 years in the United States and 2 years in Manaus, capital city of Amazonas state in Brazil. Those 5 years were because of projects. I can talk about that later. I live here with my wife and 2 daughters. Alice is 12, Bianca is 15, and 3 cats.
Yeah, brilliant. And the daughters are a similar sort of age to mine. We've only got the 1 cat left. Interesting there. It's so that's Brazil, you said, isn't it? Is the location that you're there. So when you were growing up in that mining area and things like that, what was it that you wanted to be? Did you want to be a project manager?
Never thought about it. It's interesting because I studied 7 years in a military prep school. I was probably going to join the Army or the Navy, but at the last minute, I decided to study computer science, really. Never seen a computer until then. We're talking about 81, 82, but I thought it would be interesting, okay? I was young, so let's try it. And I fell in love with that. I'm a bit old, so I had the opportunity of my first program. I used punched cards, okay, and submitted them to a window and received the listing. It was funny because it was in an all-Go language, programming language, It had like 12 lines, and the printout was like 12 pages with 200 errors. Okay, it was very interesting. And so I studied computer science. I loved it. I took a master's. I was this close of doing a PhD in Canada, but I decided to work. And it's interesting because for the last like 20 years of my career, the first 20 years, I work in software projects, mostly embedded systems, automation, SCADA software, communication protocols, very technical stuff. And I would say I'm a nerd and I'm an introvert, so I felt very well at this environment. But then when I went to the United States for 3 years, for the first time, I had to manage a multidisciplinary team. Because until then, I would manage a team of developers, for instance. Everyone was involved with software, common language, and I would be the most expert guy in the room, okay? But then, in the United States, it was development of a very large surveillance system for the Brazilian government. So I had like biologists, I had military people, I had developers. It's a multidisciplinary team I was leading. So I became a project manager without actually knowing about that. Then I came back to Brazil, and it was interesting because I didn't want to be involved in technical stuff anymore, like programming, programming languages, and technical stuff. So I learned about PMI, Project Management Institute, and it was like, is it possible to have a career in project management? That's interesting. So at first, I wanted to become a specialist in project management in the software area. So I joined PMI, studied the PMBOK to get my PMP. And like in a couple of weeks, I was like, no, 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 no. This PM stuff applies to everything, okay? Not just software. So I can broaden my horizons and maybe propose myself to work in different areas, wherever there are projects I can go to, okay? So I started also teaching PM classes. I became a volunteer for PMI, first locally. I became chapter president a few years later, then globally at the global level with PMI. But a big change in my career was in 2008. I got a job at Vale. Vale is one of the largest mining company in Brazil. And I think it's second or third in the world. And it was interesting. I was interviewed, and the manager asked me, okay, here we do logistics projects. Are you up to it? And I was like, okay, logistics. Okay, we have to take this cargo from this place to the other place. I was not so wrong, but the thing is, we build ports and railroads, big ones, like billion-dollar stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in charge of a PMO, preparing a PMO. It didn't exist then. And there was a time I would say we had like 15 to 18 billion dollars in projects. Yes, billion with a B. Okay,
That's big.
both in Brazil, Argentina, Africa. It was a very, very great experience. And since then, I switched to this area. Okay, we could say capital projects or mega projects. And in 2010, I left Vale and decided to become an independent consultant in this area. It helps a lot that I'm in Minas Gerais. Belo Horizonte is I would say, the center of mining projects not only in Brazil, I would say in South America. And so I work based here with projects all over the world, basically, for companies in Brazil and abroad.
Brilliant. That's a really interesting background and quite a transition, because I'm come from the failed accountant background into IT and then into IT project management. And I've stuck with IT project management because a lot of the time I look at all these other ones and I think that whilst I know the skills and techniques are applicable, it's quite and I was having a conversation with someone recently about this, about how moving from one domain in project management to another specialist domain, quite often you'll see roles advertised or requested where it's always saying must have experience. In your case, must have mining experience, and it's kind of that usual thing. How do you get experience unless you've got in there? But the technology side of it does. And I don't know what your thoughts were. Did you find it an easy transition going from an area where you actually understood what the people on the ground were doing to a certain level because of your technical background to, I'm guessing, when you're talking to geologists and when you're talking to structural engineers and things like that, and those sort of things, you won't necessarily understand the engineering details or that geologist information. How did you manage that transition, and that what was it like?
That's actually a great question. I would say it was easy and very difficult at the same time. The easy part is, since I'm very, I would say, analytical, I would also say I'm also an algorithmical guy, okay? I love algorithms. So whenever I'm also very curious. I'm that guy that like to read about everything. So it's a new subject, and I'm from before the internet, right? So I would love reading books and understand difficult matters, different stuff. So the easy part is, and also 20 years in automation, when you work in automation, okay, we need to develop a system to automate the rocket launching system for the Brazilian government. I need to understand the process. Now it's oil and gas, okay? And this one is for mining and stuff. I learned to understand the systems quickly, okay? Make the right questions, read, talk to the specialists. Since I'm a quiet guy, that's easy because I love asking questions, and specialists they usually like to talk a lot about their craft. So I ask questions. Sorry, I'm new to this, so I may ask you some dumb questions, but please bear with me because I need to understand. That was the easy part. The hard part, since I'm originally a software guy, the mining sector, construction, people are much more direct, I would say blunt. They curse a lot, at least in the beginning, and I was not used to that. I felt like they were offended by me or something like that. They scream, and it was very, very, very hard for me to understand and to feel good. So I decided to study, they call today power skills, but soft skills, okay?
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence and negotiation. And in order to be at ease with myself and with those people. And I would say that's why I studied coaching with CTI, Coactive Training Institute, okay? More for me than for clients or stuff like that. That was the hardest part, dealing with people, real people, and huge projects, okay? Sometimes people get desperate because if you lose an important milestone in a project, there's political pressure and a lot of stuff, right? I would say I learned to deal with that. Being an independent professional helps a lot. Sometimes people tell me that, but okay, no, you don't get it. If you screw up, you lose your job. If I screw up, I lose a contract. It's
Mhm.
almost about the same thing, okay? Especially because since these are huge contracts, I usually work one at a time, okay? That's also something very hard for me because I work contract to contract, okay? But I think I learned to deal with that. So the hard part was the people. The technical part wasn't the biggest challenge. It was actually easier. Many people they think I'm from I'm a mining engineer or something like that, okay? Because I behave like I understand the language. I can participate in technical discussions and stuff like that, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, it's fascinating because that concept of, whilst I've stayed within the IT industry and I've gone through a few different businesses, but to be honest, I've been in public sector financy type stuff for the last 20 years. So it kind of sat with my accounting background I kind of understood what we're doing. There's moving money around, you understand what you're doing with it. But then when dropping into the different technologies, especially with the pace of software technology and IT technology over the past, it's increasing all the time. I've always found that there's always something new to discover in those areas. And I just wondered how you dealt with that. And you're right, it is, in some ways, there is a little bit of a cultural difference in those different software teams as well, and those IT. So a team doing networks compared to a team doing front-end agile delivery of an app for someone, they are a very different mindset of what's going on, because the network guys are going to be, well, I'm not going to change that because that could stop everyone working. Whereas the app guys are going, well, it's all right. Let's just do this. It's all right, because if it doesn't work, there's 4 people using it. It doesn't matter. And you kind of got those extremes, and then I suppose then that stepping across into what you're talking about around the sort of mining industry stuff, the different cultures of those different teams, isn't it really? And that, I suppose, is that exacerbated when you're doing international stuff as well?
That's a lot to talk about that. First, let's talk about working with different generations, okay? Because when I worked with automation, software automation, it was almost like I grew up with the same people. So we left college, we started working together. So we developed together. So I was a senior professional, but so was my team and my colleagues. But before I joined Vale, I was project director for a company that developed software for customers abroad. And I would say I was 30 something, 32, 33. And I would say probably the oldest person member of my team would be like 20, 21. And it was interesting. It was a whole different conversation. Okay. We studied at the same school, but the language, the way they would behave and talk was totally different for me. I remember, I think there are a couple of books behind me. One was called Leading Geeks, very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
how you talk, how you deal with this younger generation. It's 20 years old or more than this book. It was very interesting, and they would love to talk, to use technical language. I think at first I believed what was to test me. Let's see if this old guy he knows the language and stuff. I did, but then I was okay, guys. But we cannot talk to customers, to clients like that. We have to develop our own way of communicating with them. Okay, that's something I would say differentiated me from them, from the technical guys. And I felt like, oh, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, to be very deep into the technical stuff. So that's one of the reasons I left a comfort zone and decided to move to a different kind of projects, a different kind of people. And then the international part was interesting because I lived and worked 3 years in the United States, and they have lots of stories to tell. Okay, because of many people think I have like a more American way of thinking or behaving. Okay, because I'm serious, I'm shy, I like to discuss technical things, and people usually have an idea from Brazilians. Oh, Brazilians are funny, they love football, samba, cachaça, and stuff like that. I'm not very much into any of those. Okay, I like meetings to start on time, to end on time, so that helped me a lot working first in the United States and later with European clients especially because of the way, but also because being a volunteer with PMI at the global level, I have to work with people from Australia, Singapore, Canada, United States, Germany, all over the world. So I had to learn to navigate this kind of environment. So I'm very grateful to PMI because of this experience, because of also they trust me to lead some teams. So it's a whole different thing when you are part of a team and then when you are the manager, the leader of a team of people from all over the world, right? Like conducting a meeting that it's 3 a.m. for me, it's 3 p.m. for my guy in Australia. The other one in Europe is like, I don't know, noon, stuff like that. So I learned a lot from that, and that helped me a lot also in my career. Okay, people would always, are you really Brazilian? Yes, yes, I am. Okay,
It's
make sense?
interesting. Yeah, it does make sense. It's interesting that you get the we have the stereotypes that we have thinking about each individual different country that when we're looking to work with them. And I remember when I worked with we were doing a European rollout, and it was really funny because I had some stereotypical ideas of our German colleague, our French colleague, our Italian colleague, our Spanish colleague, and some of those stereotypes were absolutely ticked all the way through. There was the very very distinct differences between those people and those teams as well, and their let you talk about meetings, about their meeting deadlines or not meeting deadlines, being available, the way that people talk to each other and things like that. It was really quite interesting because they were my end customers, so you had to deal with them differently because, and you knew that if someone said, "Oh, we're going to do that," and then I worked with some of my Indian colleagues previous. I was when I first started that, it was a thing of saying that where people say they're going to try to do something, make sure you get a bit more of a commitment, because try is people didn't want to say no in that environment, and it varies. And then as you say, you with yourself, the stereotype of a Brazilian would be very different to maybe what you're talking about there. Are characters that like that, those power skills you talk about, and I was at the PMI Synergy event in the UK this week, and they were talking about social intelligence. So actually, rather than painting everyone with the being right, Ivo the Brazilian, he's going to be like this, actually get to know you, talk to you, and get that understanding of who you are, what's important to you, what's not important to you, what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you, and then be able to have those conversations, because it is so much easier to, I think we apply the stereotypes, which is we all know is bad, those sort of things that can lead to really, really negative things. But also from an individual point of view, you can be trying to do something and you just think everyone's like me sometimes, and we all do it. If everybody behaved like me, life would be a lot better. But actually, no, it wouldn't. It'd be terrible because things wouldn't get done. There would be some bad things happening. So I think it's really interesting how those power skills and the social skills now we're getting less. It's been around for a long time, but I think people are starting to realise we need to treat the individual and meet the individual where they are, rather than broad brush assume everyone's the same. And that's important to do it.
Talk about something and ask you if it makes sense to you, because at first also I studied different cultures. There's a famous book, Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, like tells you
Yeah.
how to behave in different cultures. Interesting up to a point, okay? Because then, now I'm coming back to my PMI experience. I did a program you mentioned, Leadership Institute Masterclass, and we studied a lot of personality traits. And we would go to class with a card here with a color, okay? So I'm green, very analytical, okay? Ricardo is red, he's practical, he likes to get things done. The other one is blue, my wife is blue, she's like emotion all the time, and you also have the combinations of all three colors. And we would walk around with a plaque with our classification. That would help a lot. And I was like, okay, imagine if we, in the real world, were like that. I take a look at you and say, oh, Nige is green as me. Because one of the mistakes we make in life, we try to communicate to other people the way we want them to communicate with us. So I'm all about data, numbers, okay? I love numbers. But my wife hates them. She's not very good at that. So she likes to see images and talk. Okay, so I think we have the cultural aspect regarding country and also generation, but then we have the personal thing, the personal aspect. So, okay, You can be informed about me knowing that I'm from Brazil, but that will help you only to a point. You have to talk to me to understand how I am, how I think, how I communicate. And that's the hardest part, because you have to be able to talk to people to get to learn about them, especially about what motivates them. So I think it's a combination of these two things. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. There are all those different facets, and definitely that's the only thing you can change is what you do in a communication event. You can't make the other person bend to your will, and I know I mention it nearly every week on this show. There's a podcast called Manager Tools where they talk about the DISC model, which is very much based like on the Jungian model that you were talking. I think it's Carl Jung pulled that model, the red, yellow, green, this, and there's a multitude of different variations of it. And in fact, last week at the event, there's a guy called Nick Fewings he's taking it a bit further for team analysis and being able to look at where you can drill down into those. But I think it is all about, as they say, it's if you change how you deal with something, so you want lots of detail in order to make a decision. If I just tell you, let's do this, trust me, you're not going to say yes. If I send you all the data and you've got the data there to be able to look at, read, and review, then you can make an informed decision. Whereas the other way around is if you sent it to me and I know you're a very detailed person and understand the area, I'm going to say yes because I trust you more than I trust myself, and therefore we'll go, yeah, let's go for it. But then you'd be, and those are the different ways of doing it. If you send me all the data, I'll never read it. If you ask me for the decision at the beginning, I'll make the decision and maybe have that as backup. And that's the way that I think it's really interesting how those dynamics. It's really thinking about how to change those dynamics and how we do that when we go into a new regime or a new project team, because obviously, as you say, with you're going into multiple projects different times. I've got the same scenario with me. I'll be having a new team and I don't know these people sometimes, and it'll be right, okay, I need to understand you, but then we've got to get going as well, and it's kind of how do you balance those things? It's quite difficult, isn't it? So just thinking about you and your history, and we touched on it a little bit. What would you say was your first project? And now I know that sometimes your first project, you don't realize it was a project until 10 years later. But what do you think was your first project that you managed?
Well, let's talk
And tell me
about
about it.
professionally, okay? I was about, 19 years old. I was an intern for a software company, and they sent me to this clothing store, and I was told I had to develop a software to control sales. Okay, and I was a developer. I had a manager, but it wasn't called manager. He was like the boss. Okay,
Mm,
so two teams in the project team, about the owner of the company, the person in charge of sales, very, very afraid of being replaced by the system. And it's interesting because it was a project, sure, by definition. But at the time, I never thought about it. And then that's one thing that's very interesting. When, like 20 years later, I decided to study project management as a discipline. It was like I was reading the PM Bola. I knew that. I know that. Oh, I didn't know that had this name, okay? But I've been doing that for the last 20 years. But I was extremely surprised when I studied risk management. It was like, oh my God, I should have been doing that for the last 20 years. That would have made my life so much more easier. So risk management for me, it was really, really a shock. So I think all knowledge areas are important, but I would say risk management is probably my favorite because it integrates everything, okay? And I did projects for like 20 years without knowing about it.
yeah, risk management's a really interesting one because the way I've seen risk management done is as long as you've written it down on a log, you're covered. And therefore, no one can tell you off because it came to fruition. And I kind of sit there, that's not the point. The point is let's proactively resolve the issue. Whereas quite often, and some risks that you can't deal with, you can't do anything about. You just need to make people aware of that. If this happens, which we can't control, here's the mitigation. So you can put mitigations in, or you can insure against it and things like that. But I think it's really interesting that most organisations that I've seen and the way that they do it, I don't think I'm alone, is the PM tends to look, they manage the risks, but the tools that they have for managing risks don't help to manage it. All they do is report it. So you end up where you can get people going, I'll just report it. I've done that. I've done risk management. And they don't think of that mindset of how do we avoid it? How do we mitigate it? How do we insure against it? Because they've done the risk management by updating a document. And I think it's quite it is in some ways what we do as project managers. We try to predict the future of what's going to happen on a project and fix it. Or we end up the issues that we didn't know about, and then we're having to fix it retrospectively. It is an area, I think it's the tooling out there isn't easy. The general using a risk log isn't of value to the project manager. It's value to an organization, value to other stakeholders, but to the project manager, it's not a great tool for helping you move things forward, I don't think. And so, yeah, it's risk. I can see risk being one that you kind of sit there going, yeah, if you don't fill in and do it properly.
Yes. It's interesting because if you only do the risk register and document everything, now you have ChatGPT and other tools that can do like 90% of that work for you. If you want to stay relevant, I would say the power skills part helps me a lot. Get the register and then conduct meetings, talk to people. Do you really understand this? What are we going to do? Not only reporting, not only recording stuff, but in lack of a better expression, getting things done.
Yeah.
We have to do something about this. And it's not simple. ChatGPT won't tell you exactly what to do. So I'm also a big fan of complexity theory, okay? Because complexity is different from complicated. Complicated, you read a manual, you study, it makes sense. Complex, no, because you have interactions between different people, different systems. So it's almost unpredictable.
Yeah.
So by knowing that, I understood the importance of conversation, of talking to people, understanding what they are thinking, where they come from. It's funny because I didn't give value to that when I was in software development. Because, no, I have all the information, I have the technical, the documents, the specification, everything, so I just have to go and develop this system. If you are developing communication protocols, a machine talking to a different machine, okay. But if you are developing a system that is going to interact with people, you are way, way over your head. You have to be able to talk to people, to understand them, to understand the complexities. So, and when we think about mega projects, that is compounded because you have another thing that's called, let me see if I can say, transdisciplinarity. Different disciplines, but they are not in silos. They have to interact with each other to make things work. So, you have this huge mining project, and okay, 95% is construction. Okay, but the other 5%, community relations, permits, stuff like that. You have to deal with people. And many times, because, oh no, it's only a small thing. No, your project can be stopped on its tracks because it lacks a permit or because of a change in the political scenario. Okay, there was an election, so now the governor, the mayor, the president, whoever, he is against the project. I was halfway a project in a different country, and they have a political shift, and they had to leave. Okay.
Yeah.
Risk, unpredictability, complexity, they are all important.
Yeah. It's interesting because the conversation I was having recently with someone who was doing I think it was to do in a medical thing, but it was an international project. Because of beliefs in a certain country, one of their labs that they were putting down was set on fire, and one medical person in a place was killed because of those beliefs in that area around what they were doing. And I think that whole thing of bringing the people with you, the human bit of any process, is unpredictable. And you have to be ready for it, really, don't you? It's crazy how things can come out of the wood. It's usually the things that you don't expect that are things that can stop you. And I've been in a situation where it isn't, even if it's not extreme. So your point there, where you have a political organisation change, sometimes then you get the administrators of that organisation, of that country, that go, right, okay, we're not going to do anything for a bit until we find out what happens. So you get, before that change even, you get your project implemented by things slowing down, by people not making decisions because they don't want to make the wrong decision in the light of a new organisation in charge. So then that slows you down, and it doesn't stop your project, but it slows it down enough that it means you can't hit your dates. And then there's indecisions. I think actually indecision's even worse than someone saying stop, because indecision just slows and drags on what you're trying to do, and it's a really big pain. So just thinking about
an example of this, my story, because I like to tell stories. When I was working for that mining company, we were starting a project in a different country. I was about to go there and start working. And I was like, when we did the project in that other country, I was provided with a report, a 30, 40-page report about the country, okay? Political, culture, everything. So I learned a lot about it, and I'm very curious. I actually read the book and made the document and took notes. So I did the same thing. It was in Argentina. I think it doesn't hurt to say. When I got there, people started talking. Oh, let's do this and that and stuff. Brazilians, people from Argentina, from the construction engineering company, people from Scotland, Canada, United States, Australia, and stuff. I was just waiting for an opportunity because they decided they would use trucks to transport the materials for the first phase of the project. So, okay, what kind of trucks? Oh, we're going to use big train trucks and stuff like that. It's technical, but what I said was, okay, and then we are going to switch to train. We are going to build a railroad. Okay, but did you know that the truck syndicate union here is very strong? And probably they will demand that we use not one, but probably 3 drivers. Okay, and the road where the trucks are going to pass nowadays is almost deserted. And I took my calculator. Okay, so we are going to have like 5 trucks per hour in that area. And I started adding things that I learned from the report and that I made I crunched the numbers. So I don't think it's going to work. And people were like, who is this guy? I remember that because I think it was from that time. I'm just a guy who stayed at a Holiday Inn hotel last night because there was a commercial in the United States. You become more intelligent, no more. No, I just read the report. I asked questions. Okay, I envisioned different scenarios. So that's, for me, that's risk management for real. Okay, you ask questions, you talk to the people, you get different sources of information. Okay, because I'm assuming the report that was given to me was accurate, and it was, but maybe it couldn't be. So I read papers, local papers, to understand the political situation stuff. So I felt a lot of resistance to the project in that area. Okay, it helps being curious, okay, and being open to different sources of information and ask questions all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said it a couple of times about your curiosity, and it is something that whole thing of asking why, and continuing that 4-year-old mindset of, when you tell them an answer to something, say why. And I found myself doing that as a PM before now. When someone said we can't do that, and I thought, right, why? Oh, because of X, Y, and Z. Well, why is that? Or why is that? And you kind of get all the way down there and kind of understand it. And that curiosity is powerful, because the number of times where you've got something in the back of your head and you're thinking, I wonder what that is. I'll assume it's all right. And it comes back and bites you because you thought that's going to be okay. Your gut feel with your experience will tell you to ask the question, and you should ask the question. I think it's key. So just thinking about you've talked about a couple of projects there, about some big pieces of work, some great successes that you've had. I want to turn it a little bit. What would you say is your biggest screw up in your project delivery life? And what did you learn from it?
It's interesting because I wrote a chapter book about it. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's in Portuguese, okay? But when I was working that project for the Brazilian government, I was living in Manaus. And for a few years in my life, I had a side gig, believe it or not, okay? I used to DJ. Also, I had to do cultural events, okay? Bring like DJs and bands from the United States and Europe to promote shows here in Brazil. So when I was in Manaus, I was already married, and my wife used to work with me in that part of my work. We decided to create a production company and promote a big festival called Festival Nação Amazônica, Amazon Nation Festival, okay? With bands, with theater, with a fair where people would expose their crafts from locally and stuff like that. And it's funny because we thought an event for 5,000 people, and we had only 1,500. We lost our sponsor like a couple of months before. But what happened was, because of our passion to make things happen, my wife and I decided, no, we are going ahead no matter what. Okay, so we put our own money, saying, no, it's going to be very good for the company and for us. We establish a brand and stuff like that. So we were like, in hindsight, deceiving ourselves in a way. And when there were like 3 or 4 days before the event, we were promoting in the city of Manaus. It's like 1.5 million people, and the streets were deserted. And I was like, where is everyone? There was this person, this girl from the city. He said, oh no, everyone is in Parintins, a different city. They're having a huge festival that happens once a year. All the people from the city go there. So it was like, come on, you didn't tell us. No, but our public is different. No, it's not. Okay? So it was very well organized, great. People loved it, but we lost a ton of cash. And in terms of branding, at the time, I decided to come back to my city, to Belo Horizonte. So I was going to close the company. So it was such a, you can argue that from different points of view, it was a big success. People who went there, the artists, all the people who participated, they talked about that until today. But for us, it was very, very costly. And I would say, from a personal level, I like to say I did that. Okay. But if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do it because it cost me a lot of money. Okay. That, uh, and the lesson is never ever be at the same time project manager and sponsor, because you are going to go in front of a mirror and argue with yourself for more money. And that's very, very dangerous. So that's it.
That's really good advice, that, because it is that thing
And
of
this book I talked about, this is on the chapter about risk management.
right. So which book is that then?
It's called, it's in Portuguese also, Projetos Brasileiros, Brazilian projects, real cases.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Casos Reais de Gerenciamento. I butchered that, I'm sure.
Ah, really? Okay.
So that's brilliant. So let's flip that to something a bit more positive. You learned something from that, which is positive. That's great. But what would you say is your proudest project delivery? And
Let's see.
whatever made you think, yeah, I made a difference there, whether it was the project delivery, whether it was the people, whether it was just the challenge that you got over or something, whatever it is, it's kind of whatever immediately pops to your head of going, yeah, that made me
Well,
feel good.
I would say it was the so it's called CIVAM, Sistema de Vigilância da Amazônia in Portuguese. In English, you would say the surveillance system for the Amazon rainforest, because I spent 3 years in the United States developing the thing, one part of it. And then, and it was like a software development project so far. I used to do that for 20 years. But then I was invited to come to Brazil and help to make the system work. So I moved to a different city, and that's a role that I've had very, very few opportunities in my life to have. I'm in charge of making this thing work. So I have to train the users, I have to understand the local community and how they are going to interact with the system and stuff like that, okay? And it's like I spent 5 years in that. So I was extremely proud to say, near the end of my tenure there, we would have a visitor, a group of visitors. I presented the project. I was given like 90 seconds to present my part of the project. It was very specific. And it was just the Brazilian president, vice president, and all ministers, about 30 people. I had to use a suit and tie. I'm shy, so I was like, and it's funny, I had 90 seconds. I said, I'll spend 45 seconds just making a presentation. Dear Mr. President, dear Mr. Vice President, dear Minister. Okay, that's all you have. So I did my 90-second presentation, and then the president and the ministers started asking questions. And I was like, okay, but can I answer them? And the boss said, no, yeah. So, and they spent like 20 minutes asking questions to me. It was like one of the hardest experiences in my life, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, because it's
But
like, I'm
later I
assuming
felt
that
great, really.
I'm assuming that with obviously that surveillance project, that's kind of helping protect the Amazon and things like that. So it's so important to the world and to the world's ecology, etc., as well as that, as well as the project delivery complexity and that thing. So it sounds like
That's the
fantastic.
thing. Yeah, it's funny because I studied in public schools in Brazil all my life, all from kindergarten to masters. And I almost went to the military, but decided not to. But I always felt like I had a kind of I owed some gratitude or some retribution for my country, for Brazil. So I like to say that those 5 years was almost like I served in the military or something like that. Okay, because I helped build something that was very, very strategic and important to my country. I almost would say I would do that for free if I didn't need the job. Okay, so it was very, very satisfying to me.
Brilliant. So I just realised we're just coming up on the hour time that I promised I'd keep us to. And I know what you like with meetings. You said earlier you like the meetings start and finish on time.
No, but it's okay. No problem. It's a holiday here today.
That's fair enough. So I was going to say was, so I have a couple of standard questions that I have on there. So obviously you've done a bit of writing. Why did you decide? Why did you decide you wanted to write something? Why did you want to? Why did you do the articles, etc.? And why did you want to volunteer for PMI? What made you want to do that? And what did you get out of it?
The article stuff, I would say, it was because of my class advisor in my master's, because we chose a very, very specific subject, like supercomputers, but using simulation techniques and stuff like that. And he made me write like a dozen articles, mostly in English, because I was thinking about pursuing a PhD. And I must say, I loved that. I found out that I like to get very complex things, write about that in a way that people can understand. That when I did my master's. So when I switched to project management, it was almost like, okay, I studied this and I did that. So I'm going to talk about that. For instance, so I've only been personally in Europe once. I hope to be more. But it was in 2010 in Milan, Italy, at a global congress for PMI. Doing what? Presenting the work I had done at Vale. Okay? Because I thought it would be important to have that documented, both for my personal benefit, okay? No, I did that and you can read about it, right? But also for my team, for the people who worked with me. And it's not everyone that has this ability to write about things. And I found out early in life that I have it. So maybe that's why I do it. I love to write about things.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm going to ask you a couple of other close-off questions I've got here. What was your last project management podcast you listened to, or do you not listen to?
No, yes, I do. I have a colleague here in Brazil, André Schoma. He has a Capital Projects podcast. So I listened to it. I made a podcast for him once. And also to prepare for this one, I watched your podcast, especially the one you made with Ricardo Vargas, who you probably don't remember, is from Belo Horizonte too.
I know. I remember he's from that region. Yeah, he's now in Portugal, isn't he? But he is from that region.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little while ago since I talked to Ricardo. Interesting guy. He's had some fun projects over time as well. That's brilliant. So, and what was the last project blog that you read that you would recommend to people?
I like to pm.com from PMI. They have very, very, not necessarily blogs, okay, but articles. So there are some guys there that I like to really talk about. One of them is Mark Mullally, which would be
Okay.
interesting for you to have on your podcast.
Okay.
I
Mark,
like
what was
him.
his second name again?
Mark Mullally, Mullally, or something like that. I can give you his name later.
Yeah. I'll have a look.
Mark
That's
is
cool.
great.
Yeah, brilliant. So, and now, what top tip would you give to a PM that's out there? They've been project management 10 years, 15, 20 years, whatever. They're seasoned PM. What top tip would you give them to help them continue, embellish their career? Because we all forget the good things sometimes, don't we? What would you say?
Words.
One thing.
Two words. Be curious. Don't think, for instance, like I've heard some colleagues say, oh no, ChatGPT, this stuff. No, this is nothing. That's going to pass. It's not. Okay?
No.
So learn about it. Be curious about anything. Because, for instance, project management is general. You have projects everywhere. But if you want to make it in a different area, like I'm in mining and I want to go back to IT, I need to know about the business. Okay, so learn about the business, be curious, learn about the country, the area, or the region where you want to work. I think that's the best advice. And also get whatever knowledge, technical knowledge you need. But that is the easiest part, I would say. Be curious all the time.
Cool. Final question. What would you, on that first day of that project when you were in that retail shop, in that clothes shop, even though you didn't know you were doing a project then, what would you what advice would you give to you on that day before you started that project?
Take a deep breath. Everything is going to be all right. Really, because I was like, I want to go back home. Okay, I don't need to do an internship. I'm going to do a PhD or something. I don't need that. No. Yes, you do. Okay, you are outside your comfort zone, but everything is going to be all right if you remain calm, or try to remain calm. Okay, because that's really hard.
That's really good advice sometimes whenever we get stressed out. It's just take a deep breath is a great piece of advice. I forget to do it sometimes. I usually hold my breath and start going red and turning angry, but there you go. That deep breath can help. Ivo, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, cover, and how, if my listeners want to get in touch and carry on the conversation, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's the easiest way to get in touch with me. My network is from people. I have people from all over the world. The other day, PMI has like 307 chapters, and I have like people from over 300 chapters in my network. Yeah, I like doing that. And also, I'm open. I'm always open to discuss new projects, be it here in Brazil or abroad. Okay, I'm based in Belo Horizonte, but I'm fluent in English. I have an American visa. I can travel. I love traveling and talking to other people. if you have a company outside Brazil and are coming here to do projects, I think I can do that bridge very easily because of my previous work. So yeah, and I always like to talk about interest things regarding projects. So feel free to get in touch with me. Okay, I always answer.
Brilliant, brilliant. Ivo, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And no doubt we'll speak again in the future. But yeah, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye bye.
In project management, we face a common problem. The plan differs from reality. It leads to undesirable consequences, such as failure to deliver a project on time, financial loss, loss of customer and management trust, and many others. Why does it happen? The reasons may be different, but the most common among them are mistakes during the planning phase, uncoordinated teamwork, lack of information on the project progress. In Gantt Pro, we have thought through all the details to minimize these risks, both at the planning and implementation phases. At the planning phase, you save your time. Gantt Pro is an intuitive tool. In 10 minutes, you and your team will manage projects skillfully. Create a detailed and visual plan that answers what and when questions at any stage of your project. Minimize the risks of overdue tasks. Cut expenses by assigning resources like budget, time, and labor cost. You'll take into account all the constraints in advance. Planning is our strength, but we also made Gantt Pro an ideal tool to use at the implementation phase. At the implementation phase, you invite your team in the already created project and start working without any delay and confusion. Spend less time on meetings and discussions. Avoid overdue tasks and expectations. Everyone receives notifications about the workflow and gets other means for organized teamwork. Evenly distribute workload and avoid employees over-allocation. Get information on possible risks in advance and remove them timely. Have at-hand information on the project progress. Keep track of its high-level status and even project portfolios. Also, Gantt Pro gives a possibility to share your project with customers and clients at any stage, both for pre-sale and demonstration of the current state. Export reports to popular formats, keep documentation and communication around tasks in real time. With Gantt Pro, you always know when a project ends, how many resources are needed, who is working on what, and identify risks of overdue tasks at early stages. Plan with Gantt Pro, professionally and easily.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.